What happens when two of the most outspoken women in entertainment go head-to-head on live television and neither one is willing to back down? The View has seen its fair share of heated moments over the years, but what unfolded between Wanda Sykes and Joy Behar took things to a completely different level. This wasn't just a disagreement. It was a full-blown clash that had everyone in the studio holding their breath. Before we get into exactly what went down, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me whose side you're on after you hear this whole story, because trust me, you're going to have an opinion. Let's set the scene. Wanda Sykes was brought on as a guest to discuss her latest comedy special and some current events. Anyone who knows Wanda knows she doesn't hold back. She's built her entire career on saying exactly what's on her mind, and she's never been one to sugarcoat anything. Joy Behar, on the other hand, has been holding down her spot on The View for years, known for her strong opinions and her willingness to dig into controversial topics. Put these two together, and you've got a recipe for either comedy gold or an absolute explosion. What we got was definitely the latter. The conversation started off friendly enough. Whoopi Goldberg introduced Wanda. The audience gave her a warm welcome, and the panel seemed genuinely excited to have her there. The first few minutes were light. They talked about comedy, about Wanda's career, and some of the projects she'd been working on. Sarah Haynes asked about her writing process, and Wanda gave some funny anecdotes about how she comes up with material. Everyone was laughing. The energy was good, and it seemed like it was going to be one of those smooth, entertaining episodes where everyone gets along. But then Joy decided to steer the conversation in a different direction. She brought up a topic that had been making headlines that week, cancel culture and comedy, and asked where the line should be drawn between pushing boundaries and going too far. That kind of topic can go sideways fast, especially when you've got people with strong opinions sitting around that table. Joy started by saying she thinks comedians today are too worried about offending people. That comedy used to be about taking risks, and now everyone's afraid to say anything. Wanda nodded at first, but then something in her expression changed. When Joy finished, Wanda said calmly, "Well, I think there's a difference between taking risks and just being disrespectful." That was the moment the temperature in the room changed. Joy laughed it off and said, "Oh, come on. Comedy is supposed to make people uncomfortable. That's the whole point." But Wanda wasn't laughing. "No," she said. "Comedy is supposed to be funny. Making people uncomfortable just to make them uncomfortable isn't comedy. That's just being mean." Joy seemed a bit taken back, but pressed on. "Don't you think people today are just too sensitive? We can't say anything anymore without someone getting offended." Wanda shot back. "Or maybe we're finally listening to the people who've been hurt by certain kinds of jokes for decades. Maybe it's not that people are too sensitive. Maybe it's that some people never had to think about how their words affected others until now." The other hosts exchanged uncertain looks. Whoopi had that classic "should I step in?" face, while Sunny Hostin nodded slightly in agreement with Wanda but stayed quiet. Alyssa Farah Griffin looked like she wanted to speak, but couldn't find the right moment. Sarah just sat wide-eyed, watching it unfold. Joy wasn't backing down. "I just think we need to be careful about policing language too much," she said. "Where does it end? Pretty soon we won't be able to tell any jokes at all." Wanda responded evenly. "Joy, nobody's saying you can't tell jokes. What we're saying is maybe think about who you're making fun of and why. Are you punching up or punching down? Because if you're punching down, then yeah, people are going to have a problem with that." That phrase, punching down, clearly got under Joy's skin. "I've been doing comedy and commentary for decades," she said sharply. "I've never punched down. I make fun of everyone equally." Wanda smirked. "That's not really how it works, though, is it? Making fun of everyone equally sounds nice in theory. But when some people already have less power, less representation, less of a voice, making fun of them isn't the same as making fun of someone who has all the power in the world." Joy's frustration was obvious now. "So what? We're only supposed to make fun of straight white men? That's ridiculous." "I didn't say that," Wanda replied, her tone sharpening. "But I am saying that context matters. Who's telling the joke matters. Who the joke is about matters. You can't just ignore all that and pretend everything exists in a vacuum." By this point, the energy in the room was electric. The producers were probably in the control room panicking, wondering if they should cut to commercial. The audience was silent, a rare moment on The View where nobody dared react. Joy tried to calm things by saying, "Look, I respect your perspective, but I think we just have a fundamental disagreement here. I think comedy should be fearless, and you seem to think it should be careful." Wanda didn't hesitate. No, she said. I think comedy should be thoughtful. There's a difference between being fearless and being careless. You can push boundaries and still be thoughtful about it. You can be edgy without being hurtful. Joy countered. But who gets to decide what's hurtful? Everyone has a different line. If we're constantly worried about crossing someone's line, then we can't say anything at all. Wanda leaned in slightly. Usually, the people who are affected get to decide if something's hurtful. If someone tells you a joke hurt them, you don't get to tell them it didn't. That's not how feelings work. Joy paused, visibly tense, then said something that really set Wanda off. Well, sometimes people need to toughen up. And just like that, the entire tone shifted from tense debate to confrontation, and the View audience had no idea what was about to happen next. And stop being so easily offended. You could see Wanda's whole demeanor change. Up until that point, she had been firm but relatively calm. But when Joy said that, Wanda leaned forward and said, "Toughen up. So your solution to people expressing that they've been hurt is to tell them to just deal with it. That's really your take here." Joy tried to backtrack a little. "I'm just saying that not everything is a crisis. Not every joke is an attack. Sometimes a joke is just a joke." Wanda shook her head. "And sometimes a joke is not just a joke, Joy. Sometimes a joke reinforces stereotypes. Sometimes it others people. Sometimes it contributes to a culture where certain groups are seen as less than. And if you can't see that, then maybe you need to spend more time listening and less time defending your right to say whatever you want without consequences." The word consequences seemed to strike a nerve with Joy. She fired back. "Oh, so now you're talking about consequences. You mean like canceling people, ruining their careers because they made one mistake?" Wanda didn't hesitate. First of all, most of the people who complain about cancel culture are still working, still have platforms, still have careers. Second, accountability is not the same thing as canceling. If you say something harmful and people call you out for it, that's not cancel culture. That's just people using their voices. Whoopi finally decided to step in. Okay, let's take a breath here. We're getting pretty heated, and I think both of you have valid points." But before she could finish, Joy interrupted. "I just think it's interesting that I'm being lectured about comedy by someone who agrees with me 90% of the time on politics. This isn't about politics. This is about being able to have a sense of humor." That was the last straw for Wanda. She sat up straight, her jaw tightening. "Don't you dare reduce what I'm saying to not having a sense of humor. I've been in comedy longer than most people at this table have been in television. I know what funny is. What I also know is that humor doesn't give you a free pass to say whatever you want and then hide behind the excuse that it was just a joke. That's coward behavior, Joy. If you're going to say something controversial, at least have the backbone to stand behind it instead of dismissing anyone who challenges you as being too sensitive or not getting the joke." The energy in the studio completely shifted. This wasn't just a disagreement anymore. This was personal. Joy's face went red. "Coward behavior? Are you calling me a coward? I've been speaking my mind on television for years, taking heat from all sides, and you're going to sit here and call me a coward?" Wanda didn't back down an inch. "If the shoe fits, Joy. You want to say whatever you want, but the second someone pushes back, you act like you're being attacked. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You can dish it out, but you can't take it," Wanda said firmly. Sunny Hostin finally jumped in, trying to add some perspective. "I think what Wanda is trying to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that there's a responsibility that comes with having a platform. We reach millions of people, and our words have weight. That doesn't mean we can't be funny or edgy, but it does mean we should think about the impact of what we're saying." Joy turned to Sunny, her voice sharp. "So now you're ganging up on me too. This is unbelievable." Wanda cut in immediately. "Nobody's ganging up on you, Joy. This is exactly what I'm talking about. The moment someone disagrees with you, you frame it like you're under attack. We're having a conversation. A conversation where not everyone agrees with you. If you can't handle that, then maybe you need to ask yourself why." Joy shot back. "I can handle disagreement just fine. What I can't handle is being told I'm some kind of insensitive bully when I've spent my entire career standing up for marginalized communities." That's when Wanda really let her have it. Standing up for marginalized communities and listening to marginalized communities are two different things, she said. "Joy, you can support people politically. You can vote the right way. You can say all the right things about policy, but if you're not willing to listen when those same people tell you that something you said or did was hurtful, then your support is performative. It's about making you feel good, not about actually helping anyone. The audience gasped. You could hear murmurs ripple through the crowd, and a few people even started clapping, which only seemed to make Joy angrier. Performative? My activism is performative, she demanded. I've been fighting for progressive causes since before you even started doing comedy. Wanda didn't miss a beat. Then act like it, because right now you're acting like someone who cares more about being right than about actually understanding a different perspective. Alyssa Farah Griffin tried to step in with a calmer tone. I think both of you are coming from places of passion and conviction, she said. Maybe we can find some common ground here. But Joy wasn't interested in common ground. You know what, Alyssa? I don't think there is common ground here, she snapped. I think what we have is a fundamental difference in how we see the world. I see a world where people are looking for reasons to be offended. And Wanda sees a world where people are finally being heard. We're not going to agree on this. Wanda leaned back in her chair, eyes locked on Joy. You're right. We're not going to agree, she said, because I'm not interested in protecting the feelings of people who are upset that they can't say whatever they want anymore without pushback. I'm interested in protecting the people who've been hurt by careless words for generations and finally have the ability to speak up about it. And if that makes me too woke or too sensitive or whatever label you want to put on it, then fine. I'll wear that badge proudly. Joy threw up her hands. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Everything is so black and white with your generation. There's no nuance, no room for mistakes, no understanding that people are human and sometimes we say the wrong thing. It's all or nothing. You're either perfect or you're canceled. Wanda's expression hardened. My generation, Joy? I'm not some 20-year-old on Twitter. I'm a grown woman who's been navigating this industry for decades. Don't patronize me by acting like I'm some naive kid who doesn't understand how the world works. I understand exactly how the world works. I'm saying the way it's always worked isn't good enough anymore. Sarah Haynes, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke up. I think what's happening here, she said carefully, is that we're talking about two different things. Joy, you're talking about intent, and Wanda, you're talking about impact. And both of those things matter. But sometimes impact matters more than intent. If you hurt someone, even if you didn't mean to, the hurt is still real. Joy turned toward her. Of course, impact matters, but intent matters too, she insisted. We can't just ignore why someone said something and only focus on how it was received. Wanda jumped back in. Nobody's saying intent doesn't matter. What we're saying is that intent doesn't erase impact. You can have the best intentions in the world. But if what you said hurt someone, you don't get to just say, well, I didn't mean it that way, and expect everything to be fine. You have to actually acknowledge the hurt, apologize if necessary, and learn from it. That's called growth, Joy. That's called being a decent human being. Joy was visibly frustrated now. I have apologized when I've made mistakes, she said, her voice rising. I'm not perfect. I've said things I regret, and I've owned up to them. But what I'm not going to do is walk on eggshells every time I open my mouth because someone might possibly be offended by something I say. That's not living. That's existing in fear. Wanda replied calmly but firmly. There's a difference between walking on eggshells and just being thoughtful. Nobody's asking you to be perfect. We're asking you to care about how your words affect other people. If that feels like too much to ask, then I don't know what to tell you. That's when Joy stood up from the table, shocking everyone. You know what? I don't have to sit here and be attacked like this, she said. I came to work today thinking we were going to have a productive conversation, and instead I'm being told that I'm insensitive, that I'm a coward, that my activism is performative. I don't need this. Wanda stayed seated, her tone steady. Sitting here and facing criticism isn't an attack, Joy. This is accountability. And if you can't handle it, then maybe that says more about you than it does about me. Joy looked like she was about to walk off the set when Whoopi quickly stood up and placed a hand on her shoulder. Joy, sit down, she said calmly. We're going to work through this. This is what we do on this show. We have hard conversations and sometimes they get uncomfortable, but we don't run away from them. Joy hesitated for a long moment, clearly torn between pride and professionalism. Finally, she sat back down, but she refused to look at Wanda. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone on set could feel it. This wasn't just another heated debate on The View. This was something deeper, raw, and far from over. Whoopi took a slow breath and said, All right, we clearly have a lot of emotions running high right now, and that's okay. Emotions are part of having real conversations, but I want us to try to understand each other, not just defend our sides. Whoopi took a breath and said calmly, "We're not just defending our positions here, Joy. Can you explain what you're really concerned about? Not what you think Wanda is saying, but what you're actually worried about when it comes to this topic." Joy took a moment, clearly trying to collect herself. "What I'm worried about," she said slowly, "is that we're creating a culture where people are afraid to speak, where every word is analyzed, dissected, and weaponized. You can't make a mistake without your entire life being destroyed. I've seen people lose their jobs, their reputations, their livelihoods over one bad joke or one poorly worded comment. And I think that's dangerous. It stifles creativity. It stifles honesty. It creates an environment where people say what they think others want to hear instead of what they actually believe." Wanda listened closely, her expression softening slightly as she processed Joy's words. "Okay," she said, "I hear that concern. I do. But here's what I need you to understand. For every person who's lost their job over a bad joke, there are thousands of people who've lost opportunities, who've been marginalized, who've been made to feel less than because of jokes that punch down at them. The fear that you're talking about, the fear of saying the wrong thing, that's a fear marginalized people have lived with forever. We've always had to watch what we say, how we say it, who we say it to, because the consequences for us have always been higher." Joy shifted in her seat. "So, your solution is to make everyone else feel that fear too? That doesn't solve anything. That just spreads the problem around." Wanda shook her head. "No, my solution is for people with power and platforms to think before they speak. To consider who they're talking about and why. To ask themselves if what they're about to say contributes something meaningful, or if it just reinforces harmful stereotypes. That's not censorship, Joy. That's just being responsible with the influence you have." Sunny chimed in. "I think what's getting lost here is that consequences are not the same as cancellation. When someone faces consequences for something they said, that's not necessarily cancel culture. That's accountability. If you say something that offends your audience and they stop watching, that's not cancel culture. That's people exercising their choice. You're not entitled to an audience. You earn that audience, and you keep it by respecting them." Joy looked around the table, frustrated. "So, you're all against me on this? That's what's happening here." Whoopi quickly interjected. "Nobody's against you, Joy. We're trying to have a conversation. We're allowed to disagree with you without being against you. That's the whole point of this show. Different perspectives. Sometimes they clash, but that doesn't mean we're enemies." Wanda spoke again, her tone softer now. "Joy, I'm not your enemy. But I am someone who's been on the receiving end of jokes that hurt. I've had to smile and laugh along when someone made a joke about my identity because speaking up would have cost me opportunities. I've seen people I love reduced to stereotypes and punchlines. So when I push back, it's not because I want to silence anyone. It's because I want people to understand that words have power. Power to hurt or to heal." Joy was quiet for a moment, something shifting in her expression. "I don't want to hurt people," she said finally. "That's never been my intention. But I also don't want to live in a world where I have to calculate every single word before it comes out of my mouth. Where's the spontaneity? Where's the authenticity if I'm constantly worried about offending someone?" "I can't be myself," Wanda replied gently. "But who you are shouldn't be someone who hurts people, Joy. If being yourself means saying things that harm others, maybe that's something to examine. I'm not saying you have to be fake. I'm saying you should care enough about others to consider how your words land. That's not walking on eggshells. That's basic empathy." Sarah jumped in. "I think part of the issue is that we're confusing caution with thoughtfulness. Being thoughtful doesn't mean you can't be spontaneous. It just means you've built a framework for thinking about things. I can be spontaneous and still not say something racist because I've done the work to understand why certain things are harmful. It's not about stopping yourself from speaking your truth. It's about making sure your truth isn't rooted in harmful stereotypes or biases." Joy nodded slowly. "Okay, I can see that. But I still think there's a gray area we're not acknowledging. Some people find certain things offensive while others don't. There are jokes that land with one audience and bomb with another. How are we supposed to navigate that? How do we decide what's acceptable when everyone has a different opinion?" Wanda answered, "That's where listening comes in. If you tell a joke and someone says it was hurtful, you listen. You don't dismiss them or call them too sensitive. You listen to why it hurt them. And then you decide if that's something you want to keep doing. Maybe you decide the joke is worth it. Maybe you don't, but at least you've made an informed decision instead of ignoring the impact." Whoopi nodded. "And I think that's really the heart of this whole conversation. It's about caring, recognizing that your freedom to speak doesn't exist in a vacuum. Other people have feelings, experiences, and those matter. You can say whatever you want, but you're not free from the consequences of what you say. That's just how society works. Joy took a deep breath. I guess what I'm struggling with is that sometimes the consequences feel disproportionate. Someone makes one mistake, and their whole career is over. That feels extreme. Wanda tilted her head. But whose career has actually been over? Most of the people who complain about being canceled are still working. They still have platforms. They still make money. What they've lost is universal approval. And that's what they can't handle. They're not used to being criticized, and they call that cancellation. Joy paused, then said quietly, "Okay, I can acknowledge that. I can admit my perspective might be limited because I'm looking at this from a place of privilege. I have job security, a platform, resources. If I face backlash, I can weather it in ways others can't. So maybe I'm not the best person to make this argument, but I still worry about the precedent we're setting." Wanda nodded. "The precedent we're setting," she said, "is that people should be held accountable for their words and actions. And that's not a bad thing. That's progress.